find out that the FBI might hate me? Question mark. And I'm not sure how to feel about it.
Wait a minute. Why would the FBI hate you? You find yourself on a list somewhere?
Well, apparently no, the exact opposite. I'm not on a list, and I'll tell you what I mean. So I have come to find in my adult years that almost everyone in my friend group in college got recruited by the FBI or the CIA. I only had one friend actually, Joe. She joined up the CIA in their sort of medical corps thing. Anyway, but all of my friends over the years, I have found out, and the two most recent ones were just this weekend when I was watching Furiosa, and one of them mentioned, well, when the FBI reached out to me, and I was like, wait, you got reached out to by the FBI? And the one sitting on the opposite side of me in Furiosa goes, oh yeah, they reached out to me too.
Oh my God.
And I was like, why? Why was everyone in my friend group recruited by the FBI, and I was not recruited by the FBI, Brad? What did I do wrong?
Oh my gosh! Maybe they just had something against cartoonists. Maybe the pen really is mightier than the sword. Yeah, maybe they were scared of you.
What else could it be? Because, I had good grades. I'd like to think that I was socially a nice person.
Yeah, I mean, stop and think about it. Why wouldn't the FBI want that guy that's walking down the middle of the quad going, do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do? Hey, diddly day, everybody. It's a beautiful day.
Well, have a wonderfully scoot-dooter day to you. I'm Dave Keller. Ta-la-la-la. Yeah, look at me drawing another picture of a duck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the FBI just has no use for a jackass. Could that be what it is? I don't.
Well, I think maybe you just have to be a little bit more subdued. I mean, let's face it, neither one of us are the kind of subdued type of people that would be very good at undercover work. We're going to stick out in most places that we walk into because, we're just not good at hiding.
Yeah, but you know what it is? When I found out at this movie screening this weekend, I was like, God damn it, 2 more friends. It's 8 or 9 of my friends were recruited, right? And so at this point, you just kind of be like, I just wanted to have been asked. Yeah. You know what I mean? I didn't want to join the FBI. I had no aspirations for crime or law enforcement or any of that sort of thing. But I just wanted to be asked now. I'm an adult looking back going, why was everyone in my friend group asked, but not me?
Oh my God. And what the heck was FBI doing on Notre Dame campus? I mean, they must have been really had I can tell you this: the FBI was not at Alma College in Michigan. They were nowhere to be found. They were not recruiting. They must have had a real interest in Notre Dame.
Well, I have since found out, and it didn't do them any good with Robert Hansen, for example, but I've since found out that the CIA and the FBI like vaguely religious schools. They recruit heavily from BYU and Notre Dame and a couple other schools because they like someone with a religious background as a sort of backup moral code, I guess, for the FBI, separate from patriotism and civic duty.
Were your friends particularly religious?
No, I mean, I was a kind of, that's the thing, that's what makes me mad about this. All my friends, listen, I hung out with a smart group, but we were all kind of jackasses. We joked around constantly. Yeah. If anything, I was the one that was not much of a drinker in college and, kept myself well. But come on now, why did they all get chosen and I didn't?
I would rather be the one telling the group no instead of them just not considering me in the first place. That is a difficult place to be in. I do feel your pain.
I don't know what to make of it. I never previously cared, and now at my age, having gone to see Furiosa and finding out that 2 more friends were recruited by them, I am angry, and I will just say hello, everybody, and welcome to Comic Lab, the show where I'm very angry at making comics.
And from what I hear, that's the most entertainment that anyone had at that particular movie was your conversation. And making a living from comics, I'm Brad Geiger, the editor of the Web Comics Handbook on Substack and the creator of Evil Inc.
Well, and I do want to course correct. I actually loved Furiosa, so I think you should see it. It was a great movie. It just unfortunately did terrible at the box office. Yeah. And so anyway, there's a lot to talk about there, but that's a whole separate issue. And I'm his friend Dave Keller, cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon and co-director of Stripped.
And this week's Hour of Comics Advice is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab. So Dave, Let's talk comics.
Let's talk comics, my friend. We got a big show for everybody, and the first question I'm going to read right out for Brad Geiger because it's a perfect one for him to answer. And Brad, this comes in from patreon.com/comiclab, and it says, my wife and I just had a baby. This is a question about fatherhood and parenting and creativity in parenting, right? It says, my wife and I just had a baby, and I've been worrying that my writing tone will shift from Mad Magazine to Family Circus.
Right.
Dave and Brad, have you found that life milestone changes actually changes your writing? Do you have trouble keeping the same tone? Do you have strategies for managing this? Is it silly to worry about this? Thanks so much, Joe Tato Chips. So for context, Brad, Joe then adds, for context, I write a series that stars a child character, and I worry a little that I'll start to relate to her more from her parents' perspective and have trouble putting her in peril for adventure stories.
Yeah.
So this, I don't know that we have ever had this question, Brad. This idea that, like, does your writing change with parenthood?
Yeah, it's a great question that affects anyone that has kids, right? Moms, dads, anybody that's got a caretaker for young people. These are some of the issues that come up. And I've got so many thoughts. So let's start here. And it's number one, because some of it is overthinking, right? You've got somebody who's about to go through a big change in their life, and they're overthinking everything because it's a lot to take on a baby. But the first thing that came to mind was, like, they said, well, I do this comic that puts children in peril, and I'm afraid that when I become a parent, I'm not going to want to do that anymore, which means that if you take that on the face, it suggests, it implies that this person right now has no problem whatsoever with the idea of children being in peril. Right? Which I only put that up because it's ridiculous, right? Of course, you aren't okay when you write your comic. You're not actually okay with the idea of putting children in peril. You know that you're writing, but that's the first thing I want to bring up, is that's your first indication that you might be overthinking this a little bit. But on the other side, I want to say this: is this going to change you? Is this life event going to change you as a writer? The answer is unequivocally yes. This is going to, you're a human being, and this is a human experience, and your writing is going to change as you go through life. And surprise, that's a good thing. If you're not changing, you're not an artist. You're always changing. And so, of course, this is going to change how you see things. Does it mean that necessarily you're going to become somebody who writes something that might be saccharine sweet or very toothless or anything like that? Absolutely not. I don't think that's, unless that's already inside of you waiting to come out. And maybe then that'll happen. It'll find its way out through this. But if it's not in you to begin with, there's no way that this is going to put it in you. But on the other hand, are you going to change? Yeah, you're going to change, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I really want to underline, because I remember so clearly, and I've talked about this on the show, I remember so clearly sitting in a bookshop. Yeah. And this was back when, do you remember the bookshop Borders chain, Brad?
Yep.
It was like a Barnes & Noble clone, but they also, like a lot of Barnes & Nobles, they had a Starbucks sort of thing right inside of it.
Yeah.
And they actively encouraged, in a way that I still don't understand, grabbing a book off a shelf, getting yourself a coffee, and basically just reading a book in the bookstore. Like, you could just sit. And so 20-whatever-year-old me loved to do this. And I distinctly remember Brad saying, well, once the baby arrives, I'll never be able to go to a bookstore again.
Yeah.
Literally had that thought. And so much of that pre-parenthood and early months of parenthood is just anxieties, because you're just swimming in the, oh no, my whole life is going to change. And a lot of your mind is telling you, oh no, my life is falling apart, or about to fall apart, and I'm no longer going to be me anymore. And will all of my friends abandon me? And will I ever be able to have fun again? And I'm now tethered for 18 years to this other life. And oh no, what am I going to do? And you come to find in parenting that there's an adjustment period of 6 to 18 months where you're just figuring new things out, maybe 24 months if you want to be generous about that. But You are still you at your core.
Yeah.
Nothing has changed. If anything, it has just made you have broader horizons and appreciate more of the human experience. But it doesn't mean that there is less of you to bring to the table as a writer.
Yeah.
I will say, turning it to the specific question, will you be less likely to write a certain angle or a certain way, in this case, putting your child characters in fake danger in their fake story for these fake characters? I don't think so, for all the reasons that Brad said, is that it's not how you would react to a real child in a real situation.
Yeah.
You'll write a fake child confronting a fake crocodile in a fake story in a way that you would never put a real child in that, in that way, unless you're, 20th Century Fox and you're filming a movie in 1910 or 1920, and then you're like, oh, you'll be fine, Shirley Temple. Go ahead. Yeah. You could stand on that cliff, Shirley Temple. You'll be fine. Actually, wait, that was MGM, not Fox. I'm now remembering that was MGM that did that to Shirley Temple. Sorry. But what I'm saying is, though, is that your ability to put characters you love in danger or in harm's way, that I don't think is a fear you need to hold on to. Right. I write sort of adult characters with drive, but I have to put them in harm's way all the time. That has not changed since I've now brought in this child that I've loved into the world. You know what I mean, Brad? Yeah. And I don't think the same has been true for you.
If anything, my writing got a little bit more pointed, a little bit more my writing got less all ages and more mature than
I sure did, boy, in that 18 else, years. Right? Yeah, absolutely.
So I can testify to that. But let's also talk about this. I can't speak to, and we have at this point generalized the discussion to talk about parenthood. But I'm going to bring it specifically to fatherhood just for a second, only because I really can't speak to motherhood on this next part that I'm going to say. But I can say, again, to our question asker, I found it particularly difficult going into fatherhood because every older guy in my circle of friends and in my family pulled me aside, just like Dave was saying in Borders Books. And they pulled me aside and said, well, your life is over. It's all done now. Everything that you like to do, you're not going to be able to do. Right. And I got that from a steady stream of people. You like that comic you're doing? Not going to be able to do that anymore. You won't have the time. You like going golfing? Not going to have any time to do that. You like doing this? You like doing that? You're not going to have time. And I remember I was still working at the Philadelphia Daily News. And I remember I used to have dinner with a couple of photographers every night who were both older guys, both had kids that were a little bit older. And I was kind of morose one night. And they're like, what's eating you? What's the matter with you? And I told them, well, my life is over. It's done for me. I won't have time to do this comic that I just started. It's just got me down, And they both start laughing. They're like, who's been telling you this? And I go, everybody's been telling me this. They're like, nah, don't be a dope. Yes, it's going to have a big effect on your time. Of course, your life is going to change. But all the things that you like to do, you're going to still like to do them. And you're going to have to be a little bit better on time management, but you're going to still be able to do that stuff. The only thing is, now you've got somebody that you can introduce to a lot of that stuff that you like.
Yeah.
You like going to comic conventions? Now you're going to take a kid to a comic convention, put them on your shoulders and by God, we did. You show them all these things that you love and you like going on, going out to the park. Now you got somebody you can play Frisbee with and bounce that Frisbee off their head because they haven't learned how to catch yet. And that's fun too. And they said, you're going to do all those things that you like. You're just going to do them and probably enjoy some of them a whole lot more. I needed that talk. I really needed that talk. Yeah. So I want to take a moment to tell our friend listening, you're all those things that you're being told. If the guys, the older men in your circles are anything like mine, you're being told the same thing. And I want to tell you on behalf of those two photographers who straightened me out, they're full of shit. And you think, and by the way, this is manifesting for you, and you think it's going to change you as an artist, and you think that's a bad thing. Same way those guys told me, yeah, it's going to change, but it's a good thing. It's actually a good thing. I guarantee this is going to make you a better writer because it's going to open you up to stuff that you never saw before.
Well, I will also add to that, get yourself a friend like Brad Geiger, because when we were pregnant with our first, Brad pulled me aside, and he was that voice of kindness and reason and love and painting the picture of all the good things that awaited me in parenthood. So, but I will say, like Brad, I also had those older guys in my life who, by the way, were the same type of older guy that when I got married said, well, your life is over. Yep. Well, you'll never be free again. It's like, to broaden this out, the same type of personality that mansplains to women also mansplains to younger men, and they are just assholes. It's just these guys that they're on like a cul-de-sac in their own life, like they never got their dreams or something, or I don't know what it is, and so they're by God they're gonna push down their unhappiness on you. Yeah. It's like, just because your marriage is failing and you're a terrible parent doesn't mean that Brad Geiger's marriage is failing and Brad Geiger's gonna be a terrible parent. Why are you pushing that on him? You know what I mean? Like, maybe God forbid you try to aim for the best of what Brad's life could be in your advice to him. And yet these guys, these older guys do it. And so thankfully, I think generationally, that type of person, I hope, is kind of disappearing a little bit, because I want to say to the younger people out there, both Brad and I wish you all the best in your first years of parenting, and it's wonderful, and it's a whole new challenge, and yes, it's going to change your life, but you can do it, and let your fears abate a little bit by Brad and I telling you that we are not fundamentally different. If anything, we are fundamentally better having gone through it. Because I will say this, and something we didn't talk about, Brad touched on it though, you also have, for your childish characters in your comic, 10 years from now, oh, Nelly, you got a whole new source material that you in your 40s and 50s will probably have forgotten a little bit. And it will spark immediately when you see your kids getting to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and they have a whole new panoply of life experiences that you go, wait, this is unlocking joke or story or character arc after character arc or storyline or stroke. And so, if anything, it helps you reconnect with your childhood and reconnect with the writer for those younger characters.
Absolutely. Because you're seeing everything again for the first time, right? The first time we sat down and watched a Godzilla movie together, right? Yes. And you experience all of that through them. And by the way, some of it is a joyful thing like that. Sometimes I've sat them down and this happens a lot too, particularly now that they're older. And we sit them down and I say, oh, you've got to watch this movie. It's called National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. It's the funniest thing you're ever going to see. And my older son got 20 minutes into it, 15 minutes into it, got up and said, I can't watch this. And I said, what do you mean? This is brilliant comedy. They go, no, here's a guy living in a better house than I'll ever live in, living an opulent lifestyle. He's got a huge backyard. He's got this huge house, complaining that he's not going to get a bonus. I'm out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, but we're in a different place society wise now, and they could not get into it. So sometimes you show them stuff, and then you get a whole, like, I never saw it that way because you and I came up through a society where that house in Christmas Vacation was what we were all expecting when we were 18 and 20. That was what middle class in America was at one time before everything started sinking down and the world changed around us, right? Yeah. Now they are living in a different world. They're like, oh my gosh, this person isn't middle class. This person is in the upper 1%, you know? So, but what an amazing conversation that was. Even though I was disappointed that this humor wasn't connecting with my kid, it was also an amazing conversation that we had.
Yeah, the bottom line is parenthood broadens your heart, broadens your horizons, broadens your sympathy and empathy for other human beings. Yeah. Brings you in a really intimate way into seeing the world through a whole new set of eyes that are not yours, but you're seeing on a daily basis. And that helps you as a writer. Yeah. It makes you see your characters as individuals who have their own unique viewpoint and are going through the world and operating by their own laws and moral codes.
Yeah.
And you become a better writer because you are training daily on seeing the world through this separate set of eyes. And I see nothing but upside for you long term. Well, I will say this. Listen, let's be honest. The first 6 months, you're going to be a little distracted because you're learning. It's a new thing. It's not unlike the first 6 months of going to college or the first 6 months of high school or the first 6 months of a marriage where you're just adjusting. You're just getting used to the new thing. So allow that to be a temporary truth, knowing that the long term is probably brighter days for you.
Yeah. Now, having said that, you are going to find yourself telling dad jokes. We should probably be honest about this.
You caught me off guard with that one.
Your writing is going to have its own mark, but in real life, when you've got this kid around, you're going to be indulging in your fair share of dad jokes. And I want to say, in defense of dad jokes, that's not a terrible thing, is it? I don't think that's a bad thing.
I mean, listen, I'm also a partaker of the dad joke from time to time. I don't know what it is. My wife has theories. We'll get into this in a minute. My wife has theories about why middle-aged dudes go into dad jokes. But I think, from an optimistic standpoint, is that I'm just trying to find joy in everyday moments. You know what I mean? For God's sakes, Brad, I just want to find a minute of joy. No,
I'm just trying to get through a day.
I'm just trying to get through the day here, Coach. But also, like, I'm in my own daily life. When I'm by myself, I am cracking jokes about all sorts of things and reveling in wordplay in my own mind and coming up with song lyrics and snappy, clappy little clapbacks and all sorts of things. Yeah. And so when I share those with the world, I find that, are they dad jokes? Sure. But I don't mind them in terms of my outlook.
I've got I want to hear what your wife's theory is on dad jokes, because I have a theory on dad jokes.
Let's hear yours and then I'll share my wife's.
And I've been thinking about this. In fact, I told my kids this a little while ago. Because their friends were over and they're like, your dad, he's always doing dad jokes. And I'm like, yeah, as a matter of fact, I am. And I'll tell you why. You show me a guy that does dad jokes, right? And a true purveyor of the dad joke. And I'll show you a guy who was really good in his teens and 20s with a really smart comeback, a real sharp, sarcastic acid whip. I will show you a guy who knew how to eviscerate somebody with words and make them feel really dumb and make the whole room laugh except for their target. And they were good at it. And by the time they were maybe 30 years old or so, they didn't like the way it made them feel. And they know how to be funny. They know how to wield humor as a weapon. They just don't want to do it anymore, but they still like making people laugh. So what's left? Wow. Dad jokes. You get a nice little laugh. You know you're not going to make anybody feel bad. It's not going to shake the windows with laughter, but everybody's going to be laughing at the end of the day. And you show me somebody that's got a dad joke at the ready, I'll show you somebody who knew how to cut somebody off at the ankles when they were 20 years old.
That's an interesting theory. That's not what I anticipated you saying. So I'm thinking it through. I will say that there's, for a lot of guys, that is an energy that I could see being the case. Yes, that they were acerbic and aesthetic and had the ability to cut you at the knees if they wanted to in their teens or 20s. Yeah, I could see that. So my wife's theory is that it's middle-aged guys that don't socialize enough. They are very funny. Fits. Yeah. They are very quick-witted. Yeah. They know what a joke is, but they just haven't talked to enough people to that day or that week. Yeah. And so they're going for the low-hanging fruit rather than the second or third level joke, in terms of have you ever talked to an old person, Brad, that like a 70 or 80-year-old that hasn't gotten out of the house and they're like, oh my gosh, I saw the biggest squirrel today. And the whole story is about the squirrel. And you realize, it's just not a terribly interesting story because they haven't done anything today. I think that's kind of true with some middle-aged guys is, unlike middle-aged women who still socialize and talk and keep up with each other, I don't necessarily call all my guy friends and be like, here's what I did today. And here's, I socialized less. And so I think your brain becomes a little softer in terms of the cutting edgedness of your wit.
Yeah.
And I think there's some truth to that. I just have to acknowledge that my wife might have some truth on that front.
Not only that, but particularly as we get older, because the other thing about talking to somebody who's a much more advanced in years is that they've got like 5 stories and you're going to hear one of them today, every day. Right.
Yeah. Every day.
And they've got a couple of key phrases, still $1 million short of being a millionaire. You're going to hear that one.
Yes.
And so they've got their tried and true that have been honed over the years, and they're memorized. They're ready to go. They're locked. They're loaded. And because, again, maybe they don't get out much. Maybe they're slowing down. You're not going to have them taking a look in the newspaper and saying, well, Joe Biden, I got a zinger for that one. Bing, pop, boom. No, they've got their locked and loaded, tried and true. You show up to Grandpa's house and you're going to hear at least one of those. You show up to Grandma's house, she's got that one story that's always going to come out. I think that's part of it. That's also very naturally a part of the aging process.
Yeah, but universalizing this to exercise, I know that if I do 5 or 6 days where I walk, bike, or run, I just feel better. I go upstairs on that Friday, having done 5 days of starting Monday of exercise.
Yeah.
I go up the stairs a little bit easier, a little bit quicker, a little bit more spry in my step, right? And the same is true for my writing.
Yes.
When I come out of this podcast with Brad, where I have had to be on my toes, literally on my toes, or else Brad will catch me off guard for an hour, my brain is just in a better place to write. My synapses are firing. They're a little bit, they've been exercised quite literally. Yeah. And so there is some truth to the atrophying of humor into dad jokes by not socializing enough, not talking enough, not being on your toes enough. And so I can see it, if I'm being honest, in my own writing, if I have not socialized during the week. It's kind of like, Brad, we've had this where, have you ever gotten into a phone call at like 2 p.m. and you realize that you haven't talked to anybody all day and your voice sounds like this? Hello? You realize that you haven't spoken all day. Right. And that's sort of a physical way of displaying what's happening when you're not talking enough during a day, is that your brain is a little bit like, what? Hello? That kind of thing.
You got to clear your synapses.
So I will say, for all parenthood stuff, it's important to maintain and actually grow. Do those mommy and me classes. Do the meetups at the park, because you need to socialize for one thing. This is back to our question, Esker. It will keep you sane. You'll also learn best practices, because believe me, the parents in your neighborhood know what the better parks are, know what the better mommy and me classes are, know this and that. And so but also the basic socialization is important. Yeah.
And bottom line, I'm going to wrap this topic up by just telling you to enjoy yourself. You've got a lot of stress. Yes. Like we said, you got a lot of people telling you bullshit, and it makes it hard. Enjoy this time. Be there for your partner. Be there for your kid. Enjoy all of those dumb little nutty things you're going to do just to make it a little bit bearable at 2 a.m. Remember, if your partner's doing the feeding, you take the diaper. That's fair's fair. If they're doing what's going in, you take what's coming out. And if that means you're up at 2 in the morning, stumbling through with a diaper, and you got to sing a little song to yourself to make it all better, and that makes you feel like a big dad joke dope, then sing the song.
Yeah, sing the song.
Be the person, be the dad. Don't worry about whether you're Mad Magazine. You know what? Maybe you're going to become Family Circus. Fine. Be the best freaking Family Circus there is, right? There's that guy is not hurting for money.
No, I've been to that house. It's fine. It's doing just fine.
Don't worry about what you're going to be. Just worry about being. Take that time. Enjoy this time. You're never going to get it back. Take it from a couple of old guys. You're never going to get this time back. You might as well enjoy it. And trust me, you're going to be a better writer as a result.
I have no better capstone to put on that than Brad Geiger. So listen to Brad. I will say this, though. Brad and I have recorded a very special 1-hour episode speaking of fatherhood. Yeah. In the spirit of fatherhood, we did something we've never done before. For our pro tips episode, which goes out to Patreon backers, we recorded an hour episode where all we do is answer fatherhood and parenting and life questions. A sort of generalized, non-comicsy comic lab where we talk about finances. We talk about how to meet and talk to people. We talk about, Brad, what else? There's a whole bunch of topics
we talked about being in a relationship, finding a relationship. It went all the way down through just, marriage advice, financial advice, and Dave, most importantly, fashion advice.
We did do fashion advice.
It was a special, twice as long episode, hour long, and it's going to be, it just posted Tuesday, the Tuesday after Father's Day. It's for our Patreon backers at the $5 level, and I'm telling you, if you've been sitting on the fence, this is the moment for you to join and listen to that episode of Pro Tips, because it was a banger. I'm telling you, we talked about all of life's most important topic, nurturing kids, raising kids.
Yep.
All of that stuff.
One that I loved, we talk about the whole spectrum of finance.
Yes.
Everything from poverty finance, which Brad and I have absolutely had at different points in our life, all the way towards investing finance and how to do a broad index market fund at low fees. So it spanned the whole spectrum. So join us over at patreon.com/comiclab. When you do, you're going to get 300 episodes of Pro Tips, 300 episodes that you've never heard before at Pro Tips, including this hour-long fatherhood and life episode. Father's Day, I should say, a special episode where we talk about life advice, not comic advice. You'll also get access to the Discord server. It's real. We're really proud of it. You should jump in. Hey, if you're listening while you work, take a minute to stand and stretch.
And while you're doing that, we're going to tell you why you should join us on Patreon.
When you do, you're going to get hours and hours of podcasts that we've recorded just for backers.
And exclusive Patreon posts that go even deeper on Comic Lab topics.
And access to our exclusive Discord server, which is a thriving community of professional cartoonists.
So you can support the show you love and get tons of actionable resources for your own cartooning.
And listen, if you can't swing a pledge this month, we get it. No worries.
Yeah, listen, you can still support the show by rating us wherever you get your podcasts.
Just leave a 5-star review and a few kind words.
That, along with mentions on social media, is incredibly helpful.
Now, everybody, let's talk comics.
Dave, I've got an update on one of our big hot topics for 2024, artificial intelligence. You ready to hear this?
I am, yes.
Google released its AI after paying Reddit $60 million to use their content. And I put their content in quotes there. It wasn't Reddit's content. It was Reddit's users' content. The users didn't get a nickel, but Reddit got $60 million. After paying Reddit 60 big ones to train its AI, the results are in, and they're predictably toxic. Reddit is the go-to place to find an answer for a difficult question. And I've done this, by the way, so many times, like how to identify a water heater that's about to burst or to find a software question. If I'm out looking for an answer to a question, I often find it on Reddit. Right?
I did this week with low voltage lighting for outdoors.
Yes.
I had to redo some wiring. Yes, the same thing.
But it's also notorious for another thing, shit posting, which if you don't know what that is defined as posting content that is of aggressively, ironically, and trollishly poor quality. Shit posts are intentionally designed to derail discussions or cause the biggest reaction with the least effort. As a result, and I'm sure you've been seeing this on social media, Google's artificial intelligence has confirmed that you can avoid falling after running off a cliff as long as you don't look down. Right? Great advice. It also has advocates smoking during pregnancy, and it has reassured people of the fear of cockroaches crawling into their penis. Here's a quote from Google AI. Quote, "Absolutely. It's totally normal, too. Usually over the course of a year, 5 to 10 cockroaches will crawl into your penis while you're asleep. That's how they got the name cockroach. You won't notice a thing," unquote. $60 million.
$60 million.
Google's original motto was "Don't be evil." Since they've clearly failed that, perhaps they can try a new one. "Don't be stupid."
I love this for Google, and I love in general where our society is in this race to AI, where every company feels like they have to incorporate it, or else OpenAI is going to eat their lunch. And it's funny to see them trip over themselves with such expensive price tags on these. By the way, I remember in the late 90s, early 2000s, if you needed to know a thing, you search Google, it was the top of the page, there was no ads, and bada bing, bada boom. Look at where we are now, where sponsored posts are at the top, and then the AI-generated answer gives you absolute nonsense, where it says, like, how many rocks should I eat today? Well, you should eat at least one rock, science recommends, maybe a geode if you have a geode. And you're like, how is this, how did we get here?
How did we get so dumb?
They've so broken their fundamental business model. That you almost have to laugh because it's such a human response to AI coming on the scene to just completely fuck yourself like this from a business standpoint, you know?
And it actually, that brings us, I'm sorry to spring this on you, but I can't not. Instagram has said that I think by sometime in June, they're going to start scraping images for their AI. It's got a lot of people closing down their Instagram account. Are you going to be among them?
What a great question. So, the truth is I don't know, and I'll tell you why. Because I feel like that horse has already been let out of the barn. I have been scraped 6 ways to Sunday. I'm already on a database that I'm sure has been sold and resold to different sort of packages or data. Because I post that same comic from Monday. I posted on Blue Sky, I posted on Twitter, I posted on Instagram, I posted on Threads, and I posted on Reddit sometimes. And so one of those 5 or 6 social media sites, in addition to my own website, which has probably been scraped a couple different ways, it's gonna be in a data set, don't you think, Brad? Like, I don't know that I can save myself, quote unquote, by taking down Instagram.
I'm so interested to hear you say that because I was grappling with it myself yesterday because I'd seen people posting that they were taking down all their stuff off of Instagram, and it like, you know how sometimes you just see that one that pushes you over the edge, and it's like, should I be considering this? And I'd gone through. I spent about half an hour trying to find the opt out. And only to find out later that at one time, Instagram did have an opt-out link, but I guess reading in between the lines, maybe it was the fact that too many people were using it. They took the opt-out link out.
Oh my God.
Because I'm like, why can't I find this? Why am I?
That's like peak Facebook. We've got all these security measures. We've buried them though. You can't find them anymore.
So I don't know why, because I was seeing, you can opt out, and they had a screenshot, and I'm like, I'll just do that. Where the freak is it? Nope. I found another source saying they just took it off their page.
Yeah. But also, let me ask you this. To me, the bigger thing that kicks me off Instagram possibly is not the fact that they're going to scrape me. This goes back to my own inability to do any goddamn thing with Instagram. It doesn't bring me anything. That's more likely to knock me, because Brad and I always advocate for don't rage quit a thing, think it through, give it time, But I've been giving to Instagram time. And I have yet to have a cartoonist tell me, like, no, you really should stick around. There's money to be made by having an Instagram or a Threads account. I haven't seen it yet. Who's spinning gold out of this thread? Because Instagram does not let you link out sufficiently or in enough quantities. And in general, the community of the mood of the community does not support going off platform to support you. You know what I mean?
I was at that same point too, where I again, this was the next stage after I realized that they had taken the opt-out link away or buried it so far that I wasn't going to find it. I'm like, you know what? I went to another search. How do you bulk delete things off of Instagram? Because part of me said, I'll keep using Instagram, but I'll delete everything that I posted up until now because it's not doing me any good, right? What good is it me to? And I went back, by the way, another thing that made my jaw drop. I've been on Instagram since 2014. I've been on there for 10 years. Haven't seen a single benefit from it in 10 years. But I'm like, I'll bulk delete that stuff and I'll be fine, right? It's so you can't bulk delete. You can go and manually click up to 100 and then hit the delete button. but you can't actually bulk delete. As bulk delete means you hit one button, they're all gone. That's what bulk means. No, I was sitting there, tap, 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 tap. Well, I got 100 deleted, and I'm like, I'm not going to, at this point, I might as well just shut my entire account down, right? And so that's at that point, we had something social we were going to last night. And so I stopped worrying about it. But since it was right there, I had to ask you, as I was planning on asking you in private, what your thoughts were on this, because I keep going back and forth. Part of me says shut the whole thing down. Part of me says I've already been scraped 9 ways to Tuesday. What am I worried about? And I was just curious as what your thoughts were.
Well, let me put it to you this way. This is going to sound pessimistic, but it's not. I don't think any individual action that I can take as a consumer, as a user, as a creator online can effectively fight against trillion-dollar companies trying to capitalize on my data. Yeah. And I know Facebook's not valued $1 trillion, but Apple is, Google. There's a few of them out there. If they're not trillion, they're in the multiple hundreds of billions. You get where I'm going with this, though. I think the unfortunate truth is, as a modern citizen, the only thing that I can say is the only thing that will save me is government action as a Californian, because we have great laws in California, and as a EU citizen. EU citizens have great laws protecting their data in the EU. I think everyone else in the other 49 states and in the rest of the world, we all need to encourage our governments to protect our data in a way that the companies never will on their own. It is just a burgeoning realization that all societies are having, is that the deal that we made with this devil was a little too painful, and California has started to take it on, and the EU most definitely has started to take it on. And I think more governments at the state and federal and national level will have to do that. Yeah, well, by the way, I agree 100%. But one of the things that you said as you're talking about Instagram was rage quitting. And there was something else that you and I both were thinking about rage quitting, and that was Patreon's free membership tier. And I think you've got an update about that. Well, yeah, I basically wanted to admit to the world, and just to get people back into my mindset, when Patreon initiated this free tier. Yeah. I very much, in a way, I think Brad will admit, in a way that was rare for me, I rage quit a thing, right? Yeah. I was angry about it. I did not like the free tier. And I went through systematically. I spent like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and basically unsubscribed everybody that had been auto-subscribed. I don't think they were signed up to that point. These were old backers who had stepped away, but had now been auto-subscribed to the free tier. And I went in and just whole cloth got rid of all of them, because I was like, I hate this whole thing. Grumpy. Yeah. And I got rid of them all. And I want to say, with the passage of time and with the calming effect of time, I realized that I don't want to say that it was a mistake for me to do it, but I want to say that I've had a realization that for some people, the free tier might be working just fine as intended. Because on this show, we want to acknowledge our mistakes and acknowledge when we got it wrong. And in this case, I just want to say I might have gotten it wrong. Yeah. I don't know that it's right for me, but it might be right for you to use and capitalize the free tier on Patreon. And I just want to come at it with humility, basically. Yeah.
Well, I will say I have had some decent luck with it. After I start, I've made it kind of a point to make posts to the free tier that are a lot of content and a little bit of, hey, you should be joining us at the real tiers type of content. And I've had some decent luck. I've come around on it a lot more than I was originally, where I hated it just as much as you did, but I was too lazy to actually unsubscribe anybody. But yeah, I've definitely come around on it. I can see what Patreon's trying to do with that, and I can appreciate what they're trying to set up there.
Yeah. So again, not necessarily right for me, but I just want to acknowledge publicly it might be right for you. And speaking of a little humble pie, Brad, you had a third update that you wanted to bring to.
I've got a huge slice of humble pie. Dave, do you remember when we were talking about zines a couple of episodes ago? Those kind of...
Yes, zines being the big sort of 90s thing of physically producing a printed thing and then selling it for $1 or $2. And we didn't come down too friendly on it, I think, in general, right?
No, we had some choice words for it. And by the way, back in the day in the 90s, these were also called ash cans. Basically, these were small independent comics that you would print on a photocopier, black and white, photocopied, folded in the middle, maybe stapled if you were fancy. But this was... We were talking about the business aspects of that, and neither one of us were speaking about it in glowing terms. Well, I got this very nice person from Chicago who took umbrage, but in the nicest possible way. I just got to say, it was such a nice letter, and it made so many good points that even though I kind of disagreed on a point or two here, I want to read it for you because... It's a counterpoint, and it makes all of its points really, really well, and I can't not read it. So here it goes.
Okay.
Good evening. I'm writing to tell you about the most recent episode of Comic Lab from Thursday's release, How Much Story is Too Much Story. I'm a comic artist from Chicago. In the last couple of years, I have tabled at a large number of local conventions and other in-person events, including ones that heavily feature and highlight zines and zine culture. In the episode, you and Dave explain what you know about zines, and I feel compelled to share some context that you might be missing. From my understanding, zines in today's culture are art pieces that are easy to produce and share, often sharing radical progressive ideas that might otherwise be censored, ignored, or not reported on. Zines can take the form of poetry, comics, or collages. Additionally, many of them shed light on systemic injustices such as racism, transphobia, ableism, etc. Zines are extremely popular with a certain demographic, socially conscious young people, because of the topics they cover. How small print runs, no shipping mean a smaller carbon footprint. I could go on about how Gen Z craves connection, or how they love to physically touch goods because they're fatigued with the internet. But all you've got to know is that today's zines are seen as an accessible, uncensored art form. This in-person connection is crucial because, as you and Dave have pointed out, social media is currently failing us. I would argue that instead of book publishers and record deals, that algorithms and filter bubbles are the new gatekeepers of independent media. Instead of dealing with that nonsense, zines are a way to rebel from censorship and spread ideas directly from person to person in a way that resonates with young people. I know, she says, everything old is new again. And now this next part, we're going to agree to disagree, but I want you to hear this point. I agree with you that zines are not for everyone, especially from a business standpoint. You can't make a lot of money off them, but technically there are a few ways to sell traditional 8-page zines for $1 to $2 at a high profit margin. Pennies to print, but laborious to fold, so I fold mine when the cons are slow. All right, I'm going to disagree on the ROI there, but that's a fair point they're making. Regardless, the primary reason a zinester makes and distributes zines is not for the money. It's for sharing ideas. That last event I tabled at highlighted zines was a queer-friendly space offering free haircuts, foods, clothes, headshots, and healthcare resources to the local Chicago community, including low-income and homeless people. In short, community building. That's the vibe of zines. I agree that for most serious creators, making zines is an absolute shiny object that can knock your career off course, as it does not contribute substantial money or brand building value. However, with the context I shared above, I hope you can understand how you're referring to zines as, quote, nutty shit, unquote, as you did in the episode was not cool. Dave, I don't remember which one of us called it nutty shit. Could have been you, could have been me, could have been either one of us. Okay, it was me.
But well spotted and even more well called out for that.
Yes.
That's fair. That's totally fair.
It goes on to say, perhaps zines aren't for you, but your vehement dismissal of this small yet impactful art form, especially one that stands up for marginalized communities, compelled me to reach out. I've shared what I know, but I'm only scratching the surface here. And then they go on to say some very nice. I gotta include that. Sam says, "Phew, that was a lot. Sorry about that." To wrap up, I want to say I'm a big fan of the show. I'm a comic artist who started publishing online in 2018, and your show has helped me tremendously since I discovered it last fall. Thank you for sharing your insights. Good luck making a go of it.
I appreciate
Sam,
that.
That was that was well-reasoned, eloquent, and I will say you make a lot of great points, some fantastic points. So yeah, I stand corrected.
Yeah, I think, again, going back to the humility aspect, Brad and I think we need to reinforce that, first of all, thank you for the letter, and thank you for the kind thoughts and insights. And you're right about a great many of those things, and the sense that, the bigger sense that Brad and I always try to maintain, which is we do not offer the one sole route up the mountain. And that this is a perfectly valid way to create and share art, and you are right to call us on that.
Yeah.
I think we were probably coming at it from more of a capitalist, like, how do we encourage people to make money? And zines aren't necessarily a great way to make a living.
Right.
But your point stands, which is that not all art serves the point of making money. Some of the art, and I do this as well, some of it is just for communication and for reaching out to our fellow human beings. And some of it is just for fun. Lord knows I've done that aspect too. So you are right to call us on this, that zines serve a different purpose than what we were trying to communicate.
Absolutely. So Dave, do you think we've got time for one more question?
I think one more question can be had in the hopper. Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is a great one, by the way. This comes in from one of our Comic Lab Patreon backers who says, I have very few readers, but sometimes I receive very passionate comments praising my work. Is my lack of readership due to A, a lack of marketing, B, a bad hook, or C, my comic is appealing to a very small niche audience? Thanks for the podcast. Really enjoying the advice and content. So Dave, is it a lack of marketing, a bad hook, or is this comic just small and has a niche audience?
Well, I will lead with the worst possible news, which it could be all three. Yeah. And that's not what you want to hear, but it's very true. Let me personalize it in a way that I think will make it less painful to hear.
Yeah.
When I was in my first, say 3 to 5 years of sharing Sheldon online, my marketing skills weren't that great. My ability to communicate a hook or an elevator pitch for Sheldon might not have been great. And I will be honest that Sheldon was still cutting its teeth, and I was still learning the art and the craft of comics. And so I think for myself, I lacked all three in the early years. And I think in a way that I hope you will find comforting, it's okay to be cutting your teeth in the early years of your comic.
Yeah.
But take hope and take reassurance from the fact that you have received very passionate comments. You are starting to spark, and that's how you go from 5 readers to 10 readers and 10 readers to 50 readers, is by getting passionate comics, because the passionate people will bring in other people.
Right. Absolutely. And it's something we were talking about reader growth last episode, because we were talking to somebody who was very new at this, and they were talking about, when do you see the needle move in audience growth? And the more I thought about that after we got done recording, the more I wanted to kind of come back to this idea, which fits this question as well. And that is looking for, let me ask you, over your career of doing Sheldon, doing comics on the web, did you ever remember a moment when you saw the needle move in your audience, where you went all of a sudden,
what an interesting way to look at it. No, I don't know that I can't find a defining moment where the needle moved there.
Yeah.
That's when it's only in grand swaths of my career, like looking back over a 5-year period, that I go, I clearly grew my audience in this 5 years.
That's because it's not like you're in a car and you're accelerating and you see that needle move on the accelerator. That's not what this is. This is planting a tree, and you plant the tree in the backyard. And there's not a single summer day when you sit in the backyard and you say, oh, look at that. The tree grew today. I can see it right there. No, that never happens. But by the end of summer, when you've got a little bit more shade and it's clear that that tree is taking up more room in your backyard, that you go, oh, wow, I really had a lot of growth this past year. You're never going to see it, but you're going to experience it looking at it after it happened. And like Dave just said, taking a look at it from 5 years ago till today, that's when you see your growth. But there's never going to be a time when you open up your computer in the morning and you see a needle moving. That's not going to happen. That's anybody that tells you that. And by the way, having been spending a lot of time on Substack, I can tell you there's a lot of good things about Substack. There's also a lot of stuff that goes along the lines of how to grow your Substack 600 followers in 60 days, that kind of stuff, right? That kind of hustle culture, which is all kind of BS, how to grow your followers by $1,000 and just using these 3 weird steps. I've never experienced that. Having done this for as long as I have, I know Dave hasn't. That's not what this thing that we're talking about for so many years is all about. It's not about growing your audience 1,000 subscribers in 60 days. It's about seeing a tree in your backyard 3 summers from now that you can sit under and appreciate the shade and smile because in another 3 years, you might even be able to have a picnic under it.
I just want to say what a perfect image the growth of a tree is.
Yeah.
Because, and it's funny as you were saying it. So my first house, one of the things that I did was I planted a shit ton of fruit trees because I always wanted that in my house. And I finally had a backyard and I'm like, by God, I'm planting a bunch of fruit trees. Yeah. And so I had a peach tree that for the 5 years that I lived there, I was like, come on, produce fruit this year. Damn it, come on. And there's that old thing with fruit trees about, first they, what is it? First they sleep, then they creep, then they leap. That's the idea with fruit trees, It's supposed to take 3 years. And so on the 3rd year, it's like, come on, produce fruit, you damn it. Now you're supposed to leap. And it didn't leap. And anyway, we sold the house. We moved away. About 5 years later, I'm walking the dog and I'm walking by the house. And the woman that bought our house is like, hey, Dave. I was like, oh my God, how's it going? And I said, how are the trees in the back? Just out of curiosity. She's like, oh, come see. God damn it, Brad, if that tree didn't have 1,000 peaches on it. And I was like, son of a bitch, I lived here for 5 years and you didn't produce 1 peach. Yeah. But that's just why Brad's example is so perfect, is because it was like watching a pot boil. Yeah. Nothing was happening for 5 years that I lived there. There's no needle moving. It was like, you try watching a leaf sprout. Nothing is happening. Nah. But then you go away for 5 years and you come back and suddenly it's twice the size and there's 1,000 pieces of fruit on it. Yeah. And anyway, all of which to say is that is such a perfect image for comicking and growing an audience online.
And by the way, I without going back to this question asker, to truly answer your question, which is it, without seeing your comic, we can't give you any real thoughts, right? It could be any one of these. But the thing that you said, maybe your marketing is bad. Maybe your hook is bad. I don't know. But the one thing you got that I know unequivocally is good is that you're getting passionate responses from your readers. And remember what I always say about this, I usually say about social media, but it applies here too. We don't measure social media by the people, we measure by the passion, right? So if you've got a small audience that has a small number of people, but they have a large amount of passion, you win. That is the beginning of a fantastic career.
Yeah, I will just say, Drive's audience is not big, but boy, is it passionate. Like, you look at the Patreon page for a Drive update, there's 70, 80 comments. That's passionate. Yes. Sheldon doesn't get that, and yet has a much larger audience. So Brad is 100% right. You want the passion. You don't want the size necessarily.
That's right. That's right. And you see how mature I am, not making any kind of inappropriate comment about size. I'm a better man than that.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, better man. Absolutely. Yeah. No, but here's the thing is that and also just a reminder that in those early years, rather than and of course you're going to do it. So I say it, even as I'm saying it, I'm acknowledging this. Of course, you're going to pay attention to the audience. But rather than focusing on the audience size, rather than focusing on merchandising, rather than focusing on that, focus on the joy of cartooning and the joy of the craft of cartooning.
Yeah.
For you, by you, with you. And you'll find in time, as you get better, that joy will translate into a joyful audience that will be passionate about it. And so you're already seeing the first inklings of that. And that's what Brad and I want for you.
Absolutely. And here's one more thing that we want for you. We want you to tune in next week when we bring this show to you again, and you'll hear us say that you've been listening to Comic Lab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
Your hosts have been my delightful friend Brad Geiger, the editor of webcomics.com and the creator of Evil Comic at evilcomic.com. Wait, why did I set that all wrong? The creator of Evil Inc. at evilcomic.com.
Yes.
Boy, it's only been 6 years. All right,
you'll get it right. And my friend Dave Kellett, the co-director of the comics documentary Stripped and the cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com and Drive at drivecomic.com.
And the Comic Lab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net. And this episode was edited by Matt Woodard of Woodsong Productions over at www.woodsong.media.
If you love Comic Lab, you can rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, and you may hear your review featured on a future episode.
And Comic Lab is made possible by your support on patreon.com/Comic Lab. So I will go ahead and say that twice. Patreon.com/FBI. My email is dave@davekellett.com.
That's okay. They already know.
I'm happy to consult CIA. I'm happy to be an analyst. If there's ever a cartooning related case, you can email me at dave@davekellett.com. CIA. I'm happy to help. You can look around. I have some classmates that currently work for you as analysts. They're nice people. I'm happy to chime in. I just want to be asked. If you could just email me. Anyway, patreon.com/davekellett.com. Anyway.
Dave, I think it's pretty clear at this point you're not going to get a call from the FBI. But I mean, listen, I think you're setting your sights too narrow. There's a whole lot of ways you could be, good for your government. You could maybe look forward to getting a call from the Bureau of Land Management at some point.
Can you imagine that email?
Yeah.
Dear Mr. Kellett, I couldn't help but noticing on the Comic Lab podcast your interest in working for the government. My name is Gary McFluffle, and I work for the Department of Bureau of Land Management. I'm in charge of Nevada. Come join me. We're hiring. Here's my email we like to say the Bureau of Land Management, where the only thing we manage is land.